Hello, world. It's me, Dennis, and it is my pleasure to have another conversation with Brien Foster Allen. Ah, hello, Brien, my dear friend. How are you?
Doing wonderfully. How are you?
Very well. So tell me, what was that? What was that? What's going through creatively? It's time to catch up, because it's been too long.
Well, that was a little bit of improvisation mixed with something that I had also kind of written, kind of fumbled with maybe for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's an idea in the making.
How cool. How cool. So tell me what's going on. Catch me up. Here we are in the middle of a global pandemic. The patriarchy is crumbling around the world. We're trying to figure out how, as artists and interviewers and television and performers, and how we're going to fit into this new world and all that. So tell me what's on the consciousness of Brien Foster Allen today.
Oh God, it's such a loaded time period. Like just what is happening? Oh my God. Since we last spoke, it's like it's just a totally new world. It's a brave new world.
Yeah, yeah, and all of us are getting a chance to be able to participate in it and being able to. So tell me how you're doing emotionally and approaching the world both artistically and intellectually and emotionally and spiritually. Tell me how you're coming along. Take us at that. Take us into something.
Yes, sir. Well, I guess the coronavirus was a big turning point for me in a positive direction, I would say. And that it kind of sounds a little strange since it's been so difficult for
Yes.
so people. For me, I was, I guess, very lucky. I ended up, musically speaking, ended up getting involved in a mentorship program around April, or around the beginning of April,
Sure.
and that's been going exceedingly well. There's a lot of really, really cool people in that program, a lot of label executives who, and I actually formed my newest musical project based like on some people in that program. And so we're actually working really hard on getting some stuff out right now through that program. It's been really, really positive. And I would say emotionally, it's because of the music and things have been so positive, and in that realm, just through the people I've met, and then remote collaborations. If you have the right technology, you can make anything happen. You have, for example, right here, this little box,
Hmm.
two cables coming in, or two
Yeah.
cables coming in, and stuff like that. That's the stuff I use to split my signals, so I can actually send off like my distortion tones and actually like a completely dry sample, so the producer can work it however they want. So it's been a miracle, music, and because of that, I would say my emotions have actually been pretty like fairly stable through this period.
Has it
Whereas,
pushed you? I mean, when you look at yourself artistically, because when did you first pick up a guitar?
uh, 13 years old,
13.
14,
What was the impetus of you doing that?
the impetus.
Yeah, yeah. What propelled you? What impelled you to do that? To end up being the artist that you are in music, the journey that you had done. Had you had a musical foundation beforehand to get
Um,
you to that place?
I guess I had some musical training, but it wasn't in guitar. It was like in the French horn or the piano or the recorder, like
Hmm.
five cross.
Sure.
Um, and I was a shower singer, since the age of 8, singing like "And the Rockets' Red Glare," all that stuff. And so, but other than that, no, I didn't really have anything super rigorous. It's not like I started anything super crazy young.
Yeah.
I just loved it. I just loved the sound. I just loved the way the music made me feel, especially
Wow.
when I heard things like rock and roll, like the guitar, the AC/DC, like Thunderstruck, Eddie Van Halen. I just heard that and it was dazzling. It was the coolest I've ever heard in my life.
Even though that was way before your time.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right, you were 13 in what year?
Sorry, I was 13 and what was the last bit?
What year?
Oh gosh. Ooh, 2004, 5.
2004 or 5. So Van Halen and all that were way before. How did you get exposed to that? You were in South Texas at the time?
Yes, sir.
And where?
In at that age, I had just moved to Kerrville, Texas.
All right, Kerrville. All right. So you're in Kerrville, and you're how did you get exposed to Van Halen? It's because what was the music scene going on with your peers at that time?
Well, the scene was really pretty diverse. I remember one of my friends was a big classic rock guy, and I would say it was a combination between like a couple of my friends and also my parents, because my parents were also very much into like, Led Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, the Scorpions, you name it. So I told them, I was like, I want music in my life. Like I want to be myself. I want to explore this stuff. And so they showed me their albums, and I started talking to my friends too. And between both of them, I started exploring like classic rock, and also like the 80s and the 90s and new stuff too. I kind of just pushed through all of it. And it's been in my later years actually that I've been more acquainted with modern stuff.
Yeah.
Like in the last 3 years. But I would say in my childhood, like especially when I was 14, 15, I was obsessed with Jimi Hendrix or, classic rock.
And so, all right. So then you continued to work into the guitar. And think? Did you have a sense of, well, I want to pursue this as my career. I want to be a musician. This is my path as a creative artist. This is how I'm going to express my creativity.
Oh man, I think there were a couple moments in that decision. I think like when I was like 14, 15, when I really realized that the power the guitar contained and the magic it had and all of that, and just how it was just literally one of the most magical things in existence. I knew right then that it was always going to be my creative expression. I just didn't know if it was going to be a career or not. All I knew is it was a dream, and I committed to the dream. It wasn't until I was 21 until I actually decided to realistically start pursuing it. But I had the dream alive from like the ages of like 14 to 21.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
and I was actually midway through college. I was doing pretty well, but I didn't get an internship, and I started to realize like that there was a big culture difference between me and oil and gas. I wasn't like all the other oil and gas kids. I was something different.
And
It
so
seems
this is oil and gas was just there's a whole mindset
yeah.
between being a landman and all the different ways that there are to punch holes in the ground and bring. I mean, there's a whole mindset in that, and in the culture in the society.
There is, and it was one of those things that I mean, it was something my dad was involved in, but I personally, I loved the science. I loved the math and the equations and I hated the business side. I didn't like it. Didn't feel it always felt like oil and gas was a transitionary thing. It never felt like, I don't know. It just as I started to really get to know the people, just the vibes in general, I don't, there's by all means, there's some really great people in any field,
In every
really,
field.
For sure. And to this day, I still keep up with some of my really good friends in oil and gas, but I kind of realized it just wasn't really my thing. And I really wanted to just take a leap of faith into music. And a lot of people looked at me as completely insane. But I turned down an $83,000 per year job. And I suffered and went on tours and vans and shaved in the streets of New Orleans and, did all that stuff. And it felt so hopeless for so long. And it wasn't until actually the coronavirus that I actually started feeling like serious hope because of just the people I had met and like coming into contact with certain people. So it's been a wild ride, but yeah, that was the start. It was, it was wild.
Well, yeah, that interests me about Brien, because I want you to talk more about what does it take when to have a creative collaboration in music. I've been doing a lot with my producer Renee Jaworski and working on a conversation with. I've gotten a chance to meet and talk with a lot of musicians around and study about the what makes a band. How does that happen when one comes together, and how do you suddenly find this creative the creative simpatico, that vibe, and that's that appears to be happening to you during this corona time.
Yeah, that was facilitated, I would say, greatly by the internet and just meeting people who had a certain kind of a mindset. I would say my newer project, I feel a tremendous amount of artistic freedom because of just the people I'm working with. Other projects give me different things. But yeah, forming a band is a really complicated thing. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that tremendous care needs to be taken in the formation of a project if you really want it to work out the way you want. When I first started, it was pretty indiscriminate. Like, you start on Craigslist. It, and I actually got pretty lucky with my first Craigslist band. But I mean, it's a pretty wild ride. You team up with whoever, and usually things don't work out. Sometimes they do, but usually
Sure.
they don't. And then, you make a lot of mistakes. You learn a lot of lessons. You learn a lot about yourself. At least that's what, I went
That's
through.
what's happening to you.
I made so many mistakes. I learned exactly how not to do a band. And at this point, I feel like when you learn how to fill in the negative spaces, it's like a yin yang
Yeah,
transposition. Kind of like therefore, it's like if you know not how to do something, you know also how to do something, or at least differently. You know,
exactly.
and so from there, I realized, a great deal of self-knowing is required before you do these things. And the other people you work with also have to be willing to embark on that journey within themselves. And it really comes down to, like with my bandmates, you're always going to get in fights. It's intense, it's never easy. And it's like, you really got to know yourself, and you really got to know your other person, and they got to know themselves, and you got to be willing to really talk through it. The psychological aspects, like how my family might have influenced me this way. And that's why I'm thinking this way now. And you have to have the apparatus mentally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, philosophy to just engage in those full-fledged relationships. That's really what it's about. It's about the relationships.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because a creative project and everybody bringing it to. So discuss what you're doing now, and what the project that you're embarked upon right now, Brien.
Well, right now I've got a few, but everybody I work with meets a certain type of criteria, and they've been hand selected, hand picked.
Hmm.
The talent be there, the open heart and the open mind, the willingness, the perseverance, the personality. We gotta have fun. It's just all gotta be a great fit. But most of all, there's gotta be trust.
Yes.
Trust is one of those things that's tricky. I don't like to refer to trust in absolutes. I always perceive trust as a gradient. I don't know. I don't know if anybody. I don't know if it even makes sense to trust anybody 100% with everything. It's like all your eggs in one basket. But
Yep.
with bands, it's like you got to trust everybody within that. It's like, and it's up to you to determine where the cutoff is. For some people, maybe they require 70% in XYZ realms. And once those criteria are met, then it's good. For me, I have my own criteria, but with all these guys, it's met, and so it works.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because I find with me is that I also do a gradient. So I use a 0 to 1 scale. So one being like absolute, that would be like the Buddha state. That would like, absolute Christ consciousness kind, and zero being absolute darkness. So
Right.
trust is the same way. So with 0 to 1, and I have a zone, and if I can get into that 0.75 to 0.95 and keep that needle in that zone, then we've got something, because we all make mistakes, we all screw up, we all have challenges we do. But if that zone is met, within that zone, then I know that we've got something. We've got something that can offer one another head and heart, and be open and vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I think the key word is that vulnerability. And it's the hardest thing in the world. Especially, at this point, that vulnerability, I mean, that stuff correlates directly to, developmental characteristics of, your childhood, like your developmental psychology. It comes down to your parents, those experiences, and how your personality forms. And so I
Sure.
think if you want to build a creative endeavor the best way possible, you got to build it on the best foundation, and that involves people that can really dig into the psychology, their own psychology. It's an introspective practice. So,
Well, let me ask you about that then, because again, I was talking with my producer, and we're talking about how the difference between the emotional intelligence of men as a group and the emotional intelligence of women as a group, and how it's that men have not been given that space to grow into that emotional place, the place that you're in now, the place that you're willing to be open and vulnerable and expressive. So how are you and the people in your cohort uh, working on themselves? What are the ways, and how are they talking about
well, I guess there's kind of two parts of it, right? Because every person's their own person. And so there's
it?
the
Oh
internal,
yeah, amen.
and then there's the external part, right? So it's like you have the yin yang there too, where a lot of my work is inside and that comes down to my own things, and a lot of the work is outside of myself, that it just involves conversation. And everybody kind of does their own internal work differently. Like one of my buddies has a guide he speaks to, a spiritual guide, that also sort of functions as a bit of like a counselor. um, and then for me, I go kind of into the psychology realm, like with therapists, group therapy, individual practices. I've been in group for over a year now, and I've learned so much from that too. And then other people just do it differently. Some people can't afford therapy. Some people will maybe read a book on the teaching of Buddha,
Yeah.
meditation, sensory.
Or 12-step work, because so much of the work that is being done in 12-step work has to do with healing that internal hole, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what. It's attempting to find something outside of me to heal that hole that can only be done inside. And so we have to go inside to do it, like you're talking about therapy, right?
Yes, yes, sir, absolutely. I just got chills hearing you talk. I'm not even joking, because you speak the truth. And I feel like I've even lived it. The more I've oriented my perception inside, um, as above, so below, as within, without. What is inside of me, I guess, as Carl Jung would suggest, psychologically. There's a lot of ways to phrase the same truth. It's so beautiful. You can use psychology, spirituality, whatever you want, but like the bottom lines is what's inside of you. You're going to see it in the universe. It's going to predicate at least half of reality. And the more I've oriented my perception inside, the better things have turned out. And then we have to have the hard conversations too, and it sucks. But what I've come to find is generally the more brutally honest we are with each other, the better it works out. And that involves a leap of faith in the part of your, like, can I really tell you what I think? You have to trust yourself to communicate it well. You have to trust them to receive it. And I think that's really the trust building exercise. So it's kind of this inhale, exhale of like, I go inside,
Yeah.
I reemerge from my internal work. I'm changing, therefore, and from there, um, you know, it involves, you know, everybody's changing in the band all the time. So every few months we have to have a tune up. And so that's kind of what it is. It's kind of an inhale, exhale. And in fact, it's actually about the hard conversations that kind of define the prolonged periods of peace. So it's pretty fascinating, like the duality that's been going on in these relationships. And I've even been learning how to have proper relationships in therapy. And kind of getting past a lot of my codependent tendencies to bottle my emotions or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, codependency doesn't work. Even though maybe I was programmed that way, that's okay. I need to train.
Yes. I have exactly the same experience because in my own way, because I know that in codependence, I am only all right if I am chasing something outside. I need you to behave in some certain way in order to make me feel all right. And that way insanity lies. That is the definition of insanity.
1,000% agreed, because the universe just doesn't operate that way. It's
No.
as if the laws of physics are somehow tied in with this thing, and this as above, so below. Carl, I mean, psychology is an aggregation of chemistry. It's an aggregate
Yes.
law. I mean, human beings are composed of atoms. Therefore, if chemistry dictates all of my atoms, psychology therefore must be like a law of superposition based, you know, scaling up thousands of, you know, scaling up orders of magnitudes larger, you know, the same laws will govern the human experience in a kind of a different way. So by whoever wrote the laws of this universe, I don't know. All I know is things work out better when I look inside versus outside. And there's a very stark duality there, like fear versus love, inside versus outside, self-fulfilling prophecies that you manifested. And that's really so much of what life is. People don't understand their power, and it really is unfortunate, because in my situations, I feel like my situation conditioned me to think in such a way as to where I didn't even understand my own personal power, when it was with me all along. All I had to do was start looking.
Yeah. All right. Let's dig in a little deeper there. I agree with you absolutely that the universe is user friendly, and that I will experience an outpicturing of the universe that corresponds to my internal picture. So there's a direct correspondence, and that if I am willing to change my internal picture, my external picture shows up. Like, for example, if I am more compassionate to myself, I will end up meeting and experiencing more people and more events in my life that resonate with that. So therefore, I will do, if I have greater trust in myself, I will meet more people who are trustworthy. And it has happened at 72, Brien. I know, I have seen it happen over and over again. It is absurd that I don't trust it sometimes. It's absurd. It would be like my saying, oh, no, that's not going to happen again. No. Oh, no, that's not. I mean, it's happened so often in my life that I know it. And so I'm so glad that you're knowing that, because you're experiencing that, because now with your bandmates and all, as you're being willing to have a greater compassion for yourself and greater trust in yourself, you get a chance to have these hard conversations and have the growth in these projects.
It's difficult, because in my house, I could never have these kinds of conversations without there being an extreme disruption. I could never be honest. And so I was always terrified, mortified, like, about being honest. But I realized it's like I had to do the thing I feared most to get better results. And I've been so blessed, because it's not all just me. It's like I'm working with people that we train together. We allow each other to make mistakes. We pick each other back up. And I certainly am not perfect either. Sometimes I've waited too long, or sometimes actually, jump the gun and said things maybe with a little too much heat. And it's like, you experience the spectrum of
Oh,
how to
yeah.
communicate, and then we just learn together. And I'm so lucky just to have my guys, because um God, they're wonderful. And I never in a million years thought I would find such good people. But I think it's because ultimately I made all the wrong decisions for a few years, and I had to really step back, look inside, change it all, and take a few years to really get my, and now I just feel so much better. But it just took so much work. But yeah, all about the work and the, it's and I think what I've just been studying in therapy is the importance of just, because it's like, if you can stay connected with those friends through your
Yes.
dark years and come out stronger, then that's healing the entire world. It's healing you, it's healing your friend. It's just, that's the true magic that I think humans are capable of. That any do, they can heal, we can heal each other so beautifully
Yes.
in conversation.
I thank you for saying that, because that is the premise of what we're doing with a conversation with, is that the premise is that I enter the conversation at a certain level of consciousness. I set my intention that when I exit that conversation, I'm going to exit it at a higher level of consciousness than I went in. So what is that going to take? What kind of openness and vulnerability? What kind of self-care? What kind of openness to inspiration, openness to intuition am I willing to have this conversation with you, so that I will exit the conversation at a higher level of consciousness that I entered it? And that's an intention. And when I hear what you're doing with, whether you're working on a set, or you're working on something that you're working your way but doing the same path.
Indeed. I feel very energized with you. It's not every day I even have the opportunity to talk about these things, so
Yeah.
it's a privilege. Yeah, I think intention is really everything when it comes to this. It's how you relate to yourself, and I love how you're doing that. That's just so cool. And I think for a long time I kind of almost forgot the power of intention, and I just lost. Pain will do that to you, like
Yep.
you lose, like I lost my dad, and it's like you get dislodged in it, and you have to find your way back. And
Yep.
all I can say is, looking back, the pain was excruciating, very hard, but
And that was 6 years ago, right? Six
yeah,
years ago, a couple of days ago.
yes, sir. That was rough. But ultimately it's made me stronger, because I feel like it just gave me these opportunities, and ultimately, like, these opportunities to discover different ways of seeing things, psychology and spirituality, and just radically different perceptions of life that completely shattered what I was told,
Yep.
and I'm just so grateful for the pain at the end of the day, and it gave me the power to, ultimately, maybe I gave myself the power. The experience
Yep.
gave me whatever happened. I don't even know, but it's just been a process, and here we are, and intention is the most powerful weapon in the world,
Wow.
or shield, or whatever you want to do with it. It's a
Sure. So I find that I've been seeing trying to work on what metaphor that is, because as you and I have discussed, my mother, I'm also an adult child of an alcoholic, and I I don't know whether to use the metaphor of a relay race, or a rocket. The first stage can only take it so far, then it has to release, then the next stage takes it. But it's like our parental units were able to take us as far as they could by the light they could see by, right? I mean, that was just what they could do. Whatever defects or challenges or abuse or work that they were having to go through, that their own internal demons that they outpictured in their own behaviors and how they had. But there was something there that got us to be able to, at that release, then moved us into and allowed us, set the stage for us to then be able to go to that next step and do the healing, even if we can't intellectually take it all the way back to that place.
Absolutely. That I relate so much to that because, yeah, if not for my parents and the work they did, I wouldn't have even had the chance to be who I am today. And now I have a chance to take what they gave me and have my children grow beyond me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess that's transcendence, right? It's like, may they never feel the horror that, like, ever be that kind of alcoholism in my house.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, and because the thing that I found about certainly like alcoholism or drug addiction or codependence or rageaholism or any of the things that we use, that we the coping behaviors that we use, it is a constant, continual returning to, okay, what's mine to do? What's my side of the street? How can I pay attention to what's on my side of the street and offer myself as much love and compassion as I possibly can at this given moment, and then step in. And I love your willingness to have the hard, creative conversations, because that is I admire that so much, Brien.
Thank you.
And so, tell me more about that, about having a what what is a what is an example of a hard creative conversation to have?
Oh man, I mean, there have been bands where it's like we just have a difference in interpretation
Hmm.
of like how what we think is good, what we're and I mean, for God's sake, what is good? different million or 7 billion different definitions of good out there, sure, but
Right.
so it's therein alone defines the struggle for so many people already. Just
Sure.
what, and so it's usually people trying to argue over what's good and who's going to get whose way, and
Yeah.
how do we compromise, and this and that, and it's just kind of taken this haggling over the course
Hmm.
of years, even to get things to a point to where you reach a mutual understanding. It's like, well, so and so wants this vision, that's fine because it's their project, but I want this vision, and that's fine because I'm part of this too. But now there's this Venn diagram region that we just really got to smooth out where we're both okay. And it's like, it's fine for you to have your preferences, it's fine for me to have mine, but how can we just make this work? And it just takes a lot of, like I said, knowing yourself, looking inside, and communicating, and getting over the fear of potentially upsetting somebody, or is a codependent, or a recovering codependent rather. It's
Thank you. Me too.
uh, it's a process, but it's, as a recovering codependent, it's still difficult. But I feel like I've been fortunate enough to have friends that will welcome input, and then we just we just deal with it, and we say it the best way we can, and if it doesn't work out, we just talk it out. And
Yeah.
be on the phone for 3 hours having the same conversation, saying the same thing in different ways until it finally gets through our thick skulls.
Yes. Because but that's the hard work that it takes to have a great relationship, is the willingness to do the hard work.
Yes. And it takes incredible patience and compassion towards humans. And the only way to have that is to have it first towards yourself. And I think the best way I ever generated it was through going through absolute hell and hating myself more than anything. At the edge of my rope, it's like I can't take any more of this hate, or there's nothing left of me. And honestly, I mean, it just took I think it was a moment in therapy that allowed me to start to change that
Yep.
hate, and then everything started changing. If I hadn't gotten over that, I may have not survived what I was dealing with.
No, I agree with you. And at my best, what I'm finding is that when I use the therapy, if I have every single relationship be based upon the best of the therapy I've ever done, then my life becomes therapeutic. There's an arc to my life that continues. continues to build honesty. Those are the things that I talk about in group. Continue to look at myself first rather than look at you. See what my responsibility is. What I'm willing to take those steps. Am I willing to give trust and offer and to be a creative partner in this relationship, and then be willing to have the difficult conversation when my boundaries are not being supported or aligned, because we have to have boundaries. Boundaries are a big part in codependency.
Absolutely. I think honestly, boundaries, that's the biggest thing I've been working on. I actually had a very transformative experience in group recently that actually I think helped me with boundary setting altogether. It was amazing. Somebody just kind of, I don't know, kind of came at me and sort of, in my mind, it was like the wrong interpretation of me. It was like somebody basically assumed the worst in me. And it was a pretty painful experience. Because in group, I'm trying to build relationships, and I didn't really know how to deal with it, and I was ultimately encouraged to ultimately just speak my mind, and so I did, and it was a little on the intense side because my hurt was, but I felt so free afterwards. I felt a freedom that I had never felt, and I was so terrified to even do this.
Wow.
But ultimately, it actually worked out, and I've started to do it in all my other relationships, and it might be a little scarier at first. Ultimately, I feel like you can really achieve a deeper level of understanding, when you really work through it.
Well, I make my commitment to you that I will bring that to all of our conversations, to any opportunity that we have, that we continue to do that, Brien, because I want to learn from and with you. In our process, because we're both of us as creative artists. I'm in my Grandma Moses phase of my life. Grandma Moses was an artist who who painted all her life, but it wasn't until she was in her 80s that suddenly she became extremely well known and was able to get all of her work out there, and so that I feel like that I'm in that phase right now. I'm using her as my model, and to be able to do, because I want to support myself, and I want to support the world. I feel like that there's an opportunity right now in the world for a significant mind shift, a mindset change. People are open to it. We're vulnerable by the coronavirus, and not just the coronavirus, but artificial intelligence, all the work that we're doing in consciousness, the expansion and learning and growing along those ways. And so if this is a time, I want in. Send me in, coach. I want to be on the field, and I want to be on the field with you.
Absolutely. And likewise, I love how you said, I want to learn from and with you. I feel the same way about you. I feel like there's so much I've learned from all of my friends, you included. And that's really what it's all about. It's about togetherness. And I think I'm really like, it's funny because it's almost like for some people, they may perceive it as almost like a preschool level of like togetherness, but it's, oh my God,
yes.
Because let's be honest, it's always going to be kind of kindergarten.
It's always everything.
Yeah, it's simpler than we're making it. And if we kind of treat things that way and kind of start to revisit things from that basic of a level, we may get some radically different results. It's not like I even really know, but I hypothesize that humanity has just been besieged by the traumas of evolution. And if you think about it, I mean, hundreds of millions of years of just clawing our way, out of, I mean, good Lord, I mean, that's very traumatic. And so I think we're, our bodies have been affected, and we all have bad PTSD, and we're all just slowly out together. And the only way we can is together. Together as one, we will overcome, I believe.
And that's one of the neat things about my journey over these 72 years is that when I was growing up, the roles that were acceptable for a man to be a man were very well defined. I mean, they were just really clear. And I looked at them and I went, that's not me. So therefore, I don't know where I'm going to, as an artist, going to fit into these. And so then in your generation, there was more acceptance, a broader definition, whether or not you could have gotten there or not. At least there were the definitions, the roles were out there. Now in 2020, there's so much a broader people. Someone can look out into the artistic landscape or look into the landscape of humanity and say, wow, I see others that look something like me, or at least reasonably like me, or something, so I can see that I'm not alone. I'm not the one defective, which is what I grew up with. I was the one defective. Everybody else knew what they were doing, but I was the one who was defective.
Yeah, the feeling alone, I think, is one of the hardest, most discouraging things, and I felt that way too for a while. I think it was when I actually got a formal diagnosis that I realized that millions, tens of millions, 20, 30 million people could understand exactly, and that's just one category.
Yeah.
There's all, there's so many different, and it's kind of, it's a little controversial, clinging too much to labels, but I did get some good stuff out of, a diagnosis. At certain points I've had to almost abandon the label to progress. It's like jazz. It's like you have to learn and then you have to unlearn. But while I was in the learning phase, I learned so much from the label, despite the label's limitations. And I realized how just connected we all are, and how, the idea that a person is alone is the biggest lie anyone could believe in.
Exactly. There's a complete interconnectedness. We are all one. There is no, I see it much more as like we are computer terminals that are connected to the one. It appears as if we're separate terminals, but that's the illusion.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the truth. We're all connected to the mainframe. We're all connected to each other. We're all part of this one great collective intelligence. And I'm the one in my own limitations who toss out there and say, no, this is not me. No, that's not. Well, it is.
I absolutely believe that. It's as if self is just a dashed circle on a napkin. The truth is the napkin. The truth is the paper that you are ascribing these shapes on. Our projections, it's all just dashed landscapes. The idea of self, a dashed bubble. But it's all just, at the end of the day, just this fabric of reality upon which even space-time and light, matter, the laws of physics are built. But beneath, there's a deeper framework, I do believe, on an experiential level.
Yes. And that we're just now getting a chance to believe that. I mean, electricity was invented. Existed before we found a way to begin to use it. Radio waves. We didn't invent radio waves. We merely found a way to use that was there. So what are the things of the user friendliness of the universe and the consciousness that already exists, but we just haven't yet figured out how to tune into it. I mean, they're doing a lot of work with field theory right now, as far as human beings and the fields that we project and how that might work.
I do believe there's a bit of a parallel between limbic resonance and quantum field theory. It's almost like with human beings, it's like a tuning fork, and then you put that tuning fork in a grid. Once it's vibrating, it to a bunch of other forks, and eventually they pick up thing. Limbic resonance is the same way. Quantum mechanics work in similar ways too, and we see the same phenomenon happen on different scales of existence, from the quantum to the galactic.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so why are we an exception? We're not.
That's it. And that's where I think that is the wonderful part about quantum physics. The work that we're doing anyway, the work that we're getting a chance to learn. All right. Well, look, I want to put a pin in it right there. So before we get off today, because in our conversation, is there anything that is on your mind or on your heart about your projects or the things that are going right now that we want to talk about today before we finish this first conversation?
Um, I mean, all I can say is there's just a lot of releases coming up. Lots of stuff's going to be coming out. We're working with by far the most incredible people we've ever been in touch with to date. We're a Canadian singer. Her name's Lauren. Up in I think Toronto. Featured on the Ultramind album. We're
Yep.
having a lot of on the Arborena album. The El Cielo album is actually a Latin project, and I'm really excited about that one. We have some really cool people working with that one. Some executives like from labels.
Sure.
Stuff, and so that's really exciting. And then I have my solo project with Ruben also happening, where I've been really exploring my ability to actually be a vocalist too. So it's so much is about to come out where there's a song where I'm doing all vocals. There's a song where it's just a Latin pop rock song. Then I got some really cool metal songs coming out. I just am doing so many things right now. So there's just a lot coming, and I'm just very grateful. So,
well, it is my pleasure. Well, why don't you pick up your axe and play something for us, play us off of this particular episode, something that would move you.
Absolutely. I'll play maybe a couple excerpts maybe from the Latin pop rock band. And
I would love to, because this is your Mexican friend here would love to be able to have that.
I would love to provide. And it's funny, the story behind this song. Frank in this group, he's the vocalist, super talented. He's sung in I think over 50 different languages. He's very good with voice mimicry and voice acting.
Wow.
And he uses that in with his singing abilities. So I've never seen a vocalist with that level of talent where he can sing like Rob Halford from Judas Priest, and then he can sing like Aretha Franklin and he just flawlessly juggle. So he's incredible. But him and we've been on FaceTime, much like you and I are on Zoom, and here we are just recording remotely. He lives in California. And one day we were working on this one song and it was late. We were tired. He was frustrated working on this one vocal idea. I was just to the point of exhaustion, zoning out, just playing randomness. And so I start doing something like kind of like. And he just says, stop everything. Everything just stops. He's like, record that. And I was like, okay. And so I sit down and I start playing that guitar lick. And that guitar lick made him start crying because of the energy that he perceived in it. And he wrote a very inspired vocal melody that's just elaborate and incredible. I'll be more than happy to show you some previews of it. I think you'd love it. But
yes,
we showed off the demo in one of the calls in the mentorship program, and it actually got us noticed. And then they wanted to help us out with production and stuff. And so it's funny though that all it took was just the one idea, and what's really interesting is that idea was, out of all the ideas, it was the least suspecting. It was like the smallest of all the ideas, the idea that I would have never considered in a million years, the idea that was just out of thin air in the moment, and it was just captured. And then it became this whole thing, and now it's this big production. We're about to do a music video for it. But it started at 2 a.m. just messing around, exhausted.
And when are you going to be doing the music video?
We've actually been shooting it on our own iPhones. Turns out these new iPhone 11s actually have 60 frame per second 4K video quality.
I know. I mean, it is like it's astonishing the tools that are coming in that are allowing then for you to say, okay, how creative do you want to be? how much can you do? What can you bring into this?
Exactly. The iPhone, I mean, alone and just Macs, but just technology in general has really blown down the
Yep,
doors. And now I had no idea you could even do this. But at this point, I'm debating whether or not, here on out, maybe half of my music videos could be done on my own phone.
exactly.
And I just feel even that much more empowered. I had no idea, but we've already been assembling a process, and I ordered a couple gimbals off of Amazon, specifically for iPhones, so you can hold them and move them, and they're balanced and
Yep.
just incredible.
Little steady cams that you can have and that you can get the perspective of. Oh, that's just wonderful. All right, well, play these licks off. Play us off with this because I love it.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of production in that song, but I can show you like the main lick and then like the lead part that I wrote.
Do you have that already on the do you have some of it recorded?
The song's actually getting mastered right now, so it's pretty much done. And show you some previews of the track too.
I would love it. I would love to hear and anything that you can play for us.
Yes, sir. Here's the main lick is just. And then it gets into the chorus, and it's kind of just laid back from there. That's pretty much
beautiful.
The gist of the guitar part in the song. Other than that, there's just bass and drums and honestly like a lot of strings, a lot of guitars in the back. But when it comes to the I guess the lead part, it goes kind of like this. And then it has harmonies that go kind of like this. And those overlapped have a very like layered feel, so it's really interesting.
Well, I can't wait to hear it, and you keep me advised as to when you're going to be releasing some of the music video, or you're going to be putting some of that, and we'll have our next conversation.
Yes, sir. It may be coming out as soon as maybe first or second week of September.
That makes me very happy.
We're pushing this one at a million miles an hour. So.
All right. Well, we'll be there. Brien, thank you. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for the work that you've done on yourself that would allow me to be in your life. Our wonderful Donna Cosper who brought us together. And now, thank you for tuning in to another episode of A Conversation With. This is Dennis Tardon. We'll see you next time.